everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is Marley K. I have a very interesting story for you that I found in a Western Asian media source called The Cradle. It's an independent news source, so it's not mainstream. But I found the story really interesting because it is breaking down what de-dollarization is going to do to us, which is very interesting. I like reading other nations' news and their thought processes about what is happening to us. And just even the comment sections are really interesting because, Americans have this ego, or just the West in general. They act like they're invincible and nothing can happen to them. And they've been the world's bullies for so long. And so the Black and brown countries are like really excited about this time to see the fall of the West and the Saxon powers. So it's just an interesting time to be alive. I kind of, I hate to say, I hate to, you know, see the end of our own demise, but we've lived. I'm 50, so I've seen pre-globalization, the push for globalization, and then I'm seeing the fall of a form of globalization, but the I guess the onset or the rise of the global world order and the global government that is coming on board really soon. So it's just interesting to watch. And I'll tell you a quick story. Before I got into business in the professional sector, I used to work in manufacturing. And I worked in a rural manufacturing plant. We inspected and made cloth for cars. And I will never forget our plant owner. He owned several plants. His name was Roger Milliken. He's a big textile magnate, or he was. He's deceased now. But he was a huge textile magnate. And when the Democrats came up with this globalization trade act, NAFTA, he would come to our plants. He would fly in his helicopter, come to our plant and have us write these letters. And like he would explain to us what globalization would do and how it would harm us as workers. So he was like, if this passes, we're going to have to close our plants and you won't have a job, but we'll open plants overseas and we can pay people less money. We don't have to, cover all those, all these fringe benefits and different things that we have to provide for you here. We'll go to some third world country and open a plant and work people 16, 18 hours and nobody will give a crap. And so we understood what was going to happen back in the 90s, late 90s, when NAFTA was signed and they start signing all these trade acts and coming up with all these deals to create globalization so that everybody could work and everybody could make money and everybody could just be happy and share the wealth. Well, all we did was, because most people didn't really understand what was going on, because most people don't make anything and don't really understand where things come from, we outsourced our livelihood to other countries. And then the corporations started exploiting the people in those other countries. So the people in the other countries initially thought they were getting something good because American companies were coming there, they could make money. But in the end, they also were exploited in a different way than we were here. So we outsourced, what we produced, and then we end up having to buy what was produced outside of the country. And yes, it was cheaper because it was cheaper for them to make it, but we still didn't have the same types of good paying jobs that we had previously. So a lot of us that worked in manufacturing, we ended up having to be retrained. So that's how I went from having a high school diploma and working in a manufacturing plant to being retrained. And I ended up getting a journeyman's welding certification, and I got a business degree. So I always would have something to fall back on. But my instructor in the journeyman's welding class was having strokes, and he was like, this isn't a long-term solution because, you know, inhaling all those fumes and metals eventually is bad for your body, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I was a single mom, so I couldn't afford to be sick or anything. So I did take the certification, but I pursued business. So that is how I ended up in business. But it's because I lost my job in manufacturing. And so I was in my 20s, early 30s when I was working in manufacturing and when I got retrained. Here I am 50, and now you're getting ready to see another transition. And if you haven't lived long enough, then you don't really, you can't say you've seen all these changes, but I've seen them, and it is really, really scary to observe just how much of a change, we have had in America. And to see this decline in global trade, to see our people struggling after this man gave us this warning 30 years ago, it kind of plays into, what I see happening all the time when politicians create this legislation. It usually takes us 25 to 35 years to see the fruit of how it is going to harm us. And they'll sell it to us and it sounds really good in theory, but when you put it into action, it always screws us over. It always screws us up. And so what you're seeing now is how globalization failed. And it's intentional because they had to get to this point where they could usher in this new world order. But, just don't get it twisted. Your politicians don't work for you. They work for rich people. They work for corporations. They work for, I hate to use the term elite, but the wealthiest of the wealthy in the world, who you can see controlling everything. Those people at the Davos, that's who your politicians work for. So as you see the decline and you see the de-dollarization happening, and then you're going to see our eventual economic collapse because countries are not going to need us anymore. And we don't have the leverage to bully anybody anymore because countries have gone to a new financial system backed by gold, not backed by nothing, threats and war. We are all going to suffer. And so that is why I have really been pushing for my people to prepare. If you follow me, even if you're not African American, I hope you're able to glean information from what I'm telling you to prepare. But I really am adamant, our people need to be preparing because we're the poorest. We know how to live poor, but the things that we rely on because we are hostages in this system, it's going to cause us some grief because we are already at the bottom. And you can see with the flood of immigrants, you can see them giving benefits and services to the new people that they've brought in to replace us. They're giving those people precedence over us. We are going to struggle. If you're African American, just know this. And so the thing that you should be trying to do is rely as little as you can on this system, because when it fails, those people who did not prepare and who are going to the system are going to have to make compromises and do things that they do not want to do. And that is what they want you to do, especially African Americans, because they know we are the chosen people. We are true Israel. At the end of the day, everything that is going on is about us. So you wonder why we are hated. Nobody likes us. Nobody wants us. If you understand who you are, if you understand the history of who we are, of being the real chosen people of Israel, the true people, and you understand judgment is happening, and in order for us to in order for them to implement their agenda, they must keep us asleep and enslaved and keep us harming ourselves and disobeying the Most High. It all plays, you know, into this new world order, the climate agenda, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a gradual demolition. But I just want to tell that story, and mean to get off on a tangent. I just wanted to tell that story about how globalization just did not work, and how now we're being set up again for failure. So, expect to see, you're going to need to be retrained. You're going to have to find something else to do, blah, 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 blah. They're probably going to want you to get into debt, go take out student loans. So you're going to see all this stuff again. And these are things that you need to be thinking about, not just for yourselves, but for your children. Because your children, they might take us out, but your children are still going to be here. So you need to be having conversations with your children and your family members about, what the plans are. How are we going to survive in a world that is ever changing, and in a system, a capitalistic system that relies, it's predatory. So it relies on preying on people to exist. It's going to require us to have different mindsets. And so we just need to really hone in on that and be mindful that these people have plans for us, and that we are actually in the midst of a reset. And it is really a reset. Those who are not prepared are actually going to be harmed the most. So at least if you can wrap your mind around it and get your, put some things in place so that you can withstand whatever happens, those people are going to fare well. So this story is on the Cradle. It's called By the Numbers, the De-Dollarization of Global Trade. Data suggests that the US dollar reserves in central banks are dwindling, as is the influence of the US on the world economy. This presents a unique opportunity for regional currencies and alternative payment systems to enter the vacuum. And so that is what we are going to have to do. We Americans, we are going to also have to figure out alternative currencies and alternative payment systems in order to do business with each other when things collapse. So just pay attention to some of the stuff that's in this article. The imposition of US trade restrictions and sanctions against a number of nations, including Russia, Iran, Cuba, North Korea, Iraq, and Syria, have been politically ineffectual and have backfired against Western economies. As a result, the US dollar has been losing its role as a major currency for the settlement of international business claims. Because they do not adhere to the policies of the US and the Western powers, over 24 countries have been the target of unilateral or partial trade sanctions. These limitations, nevertheless, have turned out to be detrimental to the economies of the Group of Seven, G7 nations, and have begun to impact the US dollar's hegemony in world trade. In its space, a new global commercial bloc has risen to the fore, while alternatives to the Western SWIFT banking messaging system for cross-border payments have also been created. Geopolitical analyst Andrew Corribico tells the Cradle that the West's extraordinary penalties and seizure of Russian assets abroad broke faith in the Western-centric paradigm of globalization, which had been declining for years, but had nonetheless managed to maintain the world standard. Rising multipolar countries sped up their plans for de-dollarization and diversification away from Western-centric model of globalization in favor of more democratic, egalitarian, and just one centered on non-Western countries in response to these economic and financial disturbances, he said. Dwindling dollar reserves. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, recorded a decline in central bank holdings of US dollar reserves during the fourth quarter of 2020, which went from 71% to 59%, reflecting the US dollar's waning influence on the world economy. And it continues to worsen. Evidence of this can be seen in the fact that the bank's holdings of dollar claims have decreased from 7 trillion in 2021 to 6.4 trillion at the end of March 2022. According to the Currency Composition of Official Foreign Exchange Reserves, COFR, report by the IMF, the percentage of US dollars in central bank reserves has decreased by 12% since 1999, while the percentage of other currencies, particularly the Chinese yuan or yen, have shown an increasing trend with a 9% rise during this period. The study contends that the role of the dollar is waning due to competition from other currencies held by the bankers' banks for international transactions, including the introduction of the euro, and reveals that this will have an impact on both the currency and bond markets if dollar reserves continue to shrink. Alternative currencies and trade routes. To boost global commerce and Indian exports, the Reserve Bank of India devised in July last year a rupee settlement mechanism to fend off pressure on the Indian currency in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and US-EU sanctions. India has recently concluded agreements for currency exchanges of 75.4 billion with the UAE, Japan, and various South Asian nations. New Delhi has also informed South Korea and Turkey of its non-dollar mediated exchange rates for each country's currency. Currently, Turkey conducts business utilizing the national currencies of the China yuan, yen, and the Russian ruble. Iran has also proposed to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, a euro-like SCO currency for trade among the Eurasian bloc to check the weaponization of the US dollar-dominated global financial system. Mehdi Safari, Iran's deputy foreign minister for economic diplomacy, informed the media earlier in June last year that the SCO received a proposal nearly 2 months ago. They must use multilateral institutions like BRICS and the SCO to this aim, and related ones such as currency pools and potentially even the establishment of a new currency whose rate is based on a basket of other currencies to mitigate the effects of trade-related restrictions, Cole remarked. And so basically this article is just about how America used sanctions to bully other countries. And when they did it to Russia, it's basically scare everybody. It's not like they hadn't been planning to de-dollarize anyway, but it's just the writing is on the wall. Everybody sees, America is not playing fair. And whenever they get ready, they can implement sanctions, starve us, have our people mad at us, tearing up our country. And all we're doing is trying to protect ourselves. So now everybody is engaging in countermeasures to counter anything that America does. And so with that said, we all need to be doing the same thing. Everybody else should be preparing for what's coming. And there is no harm in engaging in countermeasures to soften the blow of what happens. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what happened in other countries when they failed their money failed, their economies failed, they couldn't pay their debts and their economy collapsed. Well, that's coming. And so I gave you a story last week about how the rich asset management companies have been laying off people, and they're preparing and they're warning and telling you the recession is coming. We're already in a recession. We're already dealing with inflation. We're headed towards a depression because we have multiple things happening at one time, in addition to, social unrest, political unrest. People are physically sick. We are being pumped with all types of things to kill us and make us unwell. Um, they have weaponized technology. We have a technocracy going on that people are not really paying attention to. So there are a lot of different things going on in the West that other countries don't necessarily have to deal with. Or if they do have to deal with them, they don't have to deal with as many things as we will have to contend with, because it is us that is being dethroned. And as African American people, and just, if you live in the West or if you are American in general, you are responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your own household. You are responsible for figuring out how you're going to survive. And I've been trying to tell people, for the last couple of years about what's coming, and people just think I'm crazy because I can see, and because I tend to think and analyze from a different lens. And it's a blessing and a curse, let me tell you. On top of that, we have to contend with censorship, because they don't want you to know what's coming. They want you to keep going to the movies. They want you to keep listening to this toxic music and engaging in toxic conversations on social media and being distracted from what's coming. But I'm telling you, the bottom is going to fall out, because, we're at the end of a civilization. And so if you understand what is happening, you would be preparing like your life depended on it, because your life does depend on it. So I'm going to read this last section and I'm going to end it here. BRICS is driving the de-dollarization. So if you know about BRICS, I've told you about BRICS. I know I wrote about it, but I'm not sure if I did a video on it. So I'm just going to reiterate. The trend towards de-dollarization in international trade, particularly among the BRICS nations, has gained significant momentum in recent years. Together, they represent 41% of the world's population, 24% of its gross domestic product, the GDP, and 16% of its commerce, In 2015, the BRICS New Development Bank recommended the use of national currencies in trade. 4 years later, the bank provided 25% of its $15 billion in financial assistance in local currencies and plans to increase this to 50% in the coming years. The shift towards de-dollarization is an important step for emerging economies as they seek to assert their role in the global economic system and reduce their reliance on the US dollar, which is bad for us. While the adoption of the de-dollarization may present some challenges and uncertainties, it is an important step towards a more diverse and balanced global economy. And so basically everybody is trying to cover their own butts because they're tired of being bullied. And the last thing I wanted to note was, look at these comments. In particular, this one. It says, not to mention the demise of the petrodollar, where it all started. Now that the world's largest oil importer, China, and the world's largest oil exporter, Saudi Arabia, have agreed to settle in the yuan, along with the examples in this article, we hope to see the ability of the US to punish other countries using a trading currency will come to an end. And so this basically summarizes how the rest of the world feels about the West. People are tired of being bullied. Like, this tyranny and dominance people have had it over the last 100 years. They've been able to dominate global trade, and that is coming to an end. So we are going to feel it. You see, another person said about time. Another writer said the system created by the US in 1945 had to come to an end sooner or later because of its political abuse. It will be a different world in the next 5 to 10 years when the multipolar world is fully independent of the US dollar. So this writer is saying that as soon as people don't have to rely on the dollar, the world is going to be different. We don't know if it's going to be better or worse, but people will have control of their own fates. Nations will have more control over their fate, and they won't have to worry about being bullied. And I can't say they won't, because I don't know if some of the other countries may get big and decide to turn into America and become tyrants because they want to control the world like America did. I can see that easily happening, but we don't know. So just keep in mind that the collapse is still happening. It's on schedule. People are making plans to do without America, do without us and our problems, do without our bullying, do without our military interventions and destabilization, our sanctions. All that is coming to an end. So with that said, if other countries are planning for their future and how to survive without the US dollar, y'all better be trying to do the same thing. And I'm saying it, I can't stress it enough. They're going to let you think nothing is wrong until the very end. So if you're not rich, do what you can do to protect yourself. That means buying food, medical supplies, water, stocking up on stuff so that you can survive no matter what happens. And if you are wealthy, you have savings, you have resources, you need to invest those things in methods and means that will help you survive without the support or assistance of the government. Because when they come, no, they are not coming to help. They're coming to take. Or they're coming with an agenda that you really are not going to want to be a part of. So with that said, I'm out. Please leave me your feedback in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and please subscribe to my other channels on Rumble and Odyssey in case this channel is taken down. This is the most watched channel that I have. And if I disappear, if you follow me on Rumble and Odyssey, you will be able to still get the updates. All of the videos here are also on Rumble and Odyssey. They automatically feed over, and those other platforms are a lot freer. I just use this one because our people tend to not like change, and they don't use those platforms. So if I disappear, that's where I will be. All right, y'all take it easy, and I'll have another story for y'all shortly.